All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have Brad Elvis and Chloe Orwell of The Handcuffs, a pop rock group out of Chicago. Chloe and Brad are both songwriters, multi-instrumentalists. Brad is known for his drumming, and he's known from groups you may have heard before, such as Screams, the Elvis Brothers, and currently in the Romantics. Brad is a drumming legend, and so it was an honor to get to chat with him. I tried to focus this conversation on The Handcuffs. I did ask a little bit about his Devo stories and some Bowie stories, but I tried to really focus on the project they have at hand. Now, this conversation gets a little talking over each other a bit because there's some latency issues with the Zoom. And but it was a lot of fun. It was like sitting, hanging out with them in person. I feel like they're real genuine and a lot of fun, goofy, silly. So though it may seem talking over each other a little bit, and kind of not on my end, but it was all in good fun, and I think you guys will pick up on the vibe of the conversation and hopefully sink right in like I did. The Handcuffs have a new album out. It's called Burn the Rails, available on all streaming platforms. There's a limited vinyl release. If you go to thehandcuffs.com, you can learn about that. We're going to listen to a tune off the new record. This is Big Fat Mouth Shut off Burn the Rails, The Handcuffs. Big Fat Mouth Shut, The Handcuffs, the new record's Burn the Rails. It's all over the place. This is an example of one of the many kind of styles they approach. Check the record out. It's a fun time. It's as fun as they are. And you're about to hear that. So if you guys can rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on one of the podcast platforms, it helps me immensely. Share the insight from these cool people with you. And with that being said, here's my convo with Chloe and Brad.
Okay, fantastic.
And how do we look? I mean, we have our suits on and our
looking great.
Great. You too.
Thank you.
I love the top hat.
You might be talking.
Microphone.
It is. This used to be my. Well, actually, this is the microphone we recorded our record. I recorded 99% of my vocals on.
Oh yeah.
I think I used a blue. Yeah, I think I used a blue mouse for some of the other. And it's not the color blue, the brand blue, which used to be my favorite. That used to be my favorite microphone, and then this mic worked better for this record. That is so not relevant. Sorry,
but no, it definitely is because there's with this newest one you guys recorded. There's a different tone vocally, at least at first I've noticed. So I wonder if that the process of recording it, maybe led to that, or if it was a performance choice. But so the kind of jump in with using this new record. No, I wanted to give you guys where I'm coming from before I start getting weird, I guess. But is most of the Handcuff stuff? Are you guys doing this all on your own, or was that kind of a COVID situation that you're recording from home?
No. Yes and no.
Okay.
No.
And
you had finished most of it before COVID even hit.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. Although we did a lot of.
But we were anticipating it. No, I'm just kidding.
We did. But we basically we did some more mixes during. Well, first of all, you mean on our own, as in we recorded it ourselves, or just like the two of us?
Well, kind of when you were talking about your mic choice, that I kind of was like, I wonder if they did it on their own. It sounds like because, so when you're recording vocals, was that on your own time at your own place, or did you bring that into the studio?
So we actually did.
Well, we started, as always, at the studio, which is about a half-hour drive for us. And which is not terrible.
And it's and I just want to say visually, just because nobody sees this, they're hearing this. The studio is in a giant warehouse building, and it's like this humongous
cement,
but they've obviously made it acoustically.
But supposedly it was. Someone told me supposedly the building they made bombs there.
They made artillery for World War II.
So you go in, it's like the most sturdy, complete cement, everything, everywhere.
Solid.
Hallways, stairways.
Right. And it's
ironed, this and that. It's like this crazy, inside this warehouse.
And it's the top floor of this like the whole top floor of this giant warehouse building. And so it's just, and they've made little rooms in it and everything. It's a very cool and kind of interesting building to work in because it's just, so anyway, that is.
You go down this grungy cement hallway and you slide open this big old heavy door. Slide this door open and it's like, and then it's like, oh wow, another world in here. All of a sudden there's like this
a
big
gigantic live room with like different.
Even like at this one point, since it's on the top floor, there's like these crazy industrial like windows up there, and there's still like this chain thing like hanging down from I don't know what
they did with it. Yeah,
like to lift up stuff. And anyway, it's pretty unique. But anyway, it's a bit of a drive and back and forth, and we've been recording all of our albums there for years, and now with modern technology, you can move and do this and that. But we did all the basic drum tracks and
like the basic
and
tracks
the basic
there.
A lot of the basic guitar, bass, all that stuff, and then it was like, hey, I can come to your house.
Engineer producer said, why don't we try to do a different environment with some of the overdubs? And
so at that point it was easy. You could put the amplifier in a hallway or in a bathroom or in the living room
or in the laundry room, which we did a couple times.
Yeah. So it worked out really well.
So we did so the vocals, cause I'm the lead vocalist. The vocals we did in most of them in like our living room, which is kind of like a big live room. It's we have sort of like an open kind of ranch house,
actually,
like wood floors, and
great.
It was really beautiful. And the engineer producer, who's one of our very best friends, he's been at our house and he said, I want to try to do vocals in your living room. I think it would be a great room. And, he brought his remote stuff over and we recorded, and I was using this mic anyway. And he brought over a couple of other mics, but we decided we liked this one the best for most of the songs. And which is a Shure SM7B.
Yeah.
It's a real workhorse of a mic for many reasons. And so we actually affectionately named our home studio Egg Carton Studios. And there's another story with that.
Sound
we did a lot of right, exactly. We did a lot of the overdubs here, not just vocals, but other stuff. I played some guitar here. Brad was actually traveling on the road. The engineer came over and we mic'd up an old Silvertone guitar and just stuck the mic right at the Silvertone. It's like a hollow body, and kind of made it sound acoustic. And then we plugged it into a teeny tiny amp, and it's just like, in the living room, which was pretty great.
So you're getting two sounds. You're getting that like acoustic from like because like you're saying that's almost a hollow body. Then you get the electric, to double it. That's pretty cool. That's a cool idea.
It was. Yeah. And he was like, let's do it at your place, because you have these different rooms and he was just like, for a different environment, a different feel. And it was pretty great. I mean, the studio is great where we work, but it was kind of fun to experience something that was a little out of the box kind of thing.
And it was handy because we have so much music here at the house, like entire wall of vinyl LPs and things like that. So, and the new album,
and we have a bunch of amps and stuff downstairs.
It's
here,
music house here. So, with this vibe, what we wanted for the new album, every once in a while we're like, what's that album, or what's a sound that had what kind of vocals? Where were the background vocals in the mix on the song? And I was like, well, hang on,
and we just
pull it out and spin it on, and it's like, oh yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That they don't even have a rhythm guitar when the solo's going. So let's take that rhythm out and just have the solo. It's just very raw and very 1970 to 1974,
Yeah.
So it was a neat little environment to be in.
And having said that, obviously we could do all that with, going on Spotify or YouTube and finding songs to hear that. But
this was more fun.
We really wanted to do it old school, where we actually would listen to it on an analog piece of, on an analog medium instead of just going online and listening. We kind of wanted to stay true to what our vision was for this record. So that's why we're like, yeah, we're going to listen to it on vinyl instead of just doing it the easy way and pulling it up online. So
right.
So just to clarify that we could have done, we could have pulled it up on.
For sure. Right. But that's, I don't know, there's a comfort, one being that it's your home, and like maybe arguably that's where you wrote some of these. And like, just the flexibility of like, because vocals and the overdub stuff, I feel that's the most tedious stuff, because you're like, okay, that's going to be on top. And with drums, you need the room. You need a specific room to get that sound, and like that's a lot of micage, and you want the guy who knows that room better than any other room in the world to not be experimenting. You want to knock those out. So it makes sense to like knock those out in the studio. But it's also interesting, like with like a thing like this warehouse, this desolate area of that is no longer anything, is now this beautiful environment to capture like people's dreams and ambitions and put them out on a thing. And like it's really cool to find areas like that. And then at the same time, well, that same thing could be your living room, Yeah. And like I was gonna say,
Oh, go ahead.
You gotta love the zooms for the weird, like, but like it's and the possibility of a living room being able to can create that type of sound, like, and because like sometimes the studio doesn't even matter. You can do the whole thing out of the basement or out of the bathroom.
Yeah. I used to be really skeptical of like home recordings.
Yeah.
Because I'm sort of like old school. I feel like, you got to separate the art from comfort.
Right.
However, there's two issues. For one thing, if you have a great engineer who knows how to get sounds, you can do it anywhere. And we do have that in our, we can do little demos and stuff ourselves, but I wouldn't want to record a record myself. I like to use a pro person who can push me and get these amazing sounds. So when you have an amazing engineer, the engineers are so important. People underestimate, I think, how important engineering is. So that is one issue. And then the other thing is, years ago, I think we both saw this documentary about Jeff Lynne. And he was from, what are the bands? The Move, Electric Light Orchestra, and he...
Idle Race.
Okay. You know these things because you are a freak about music. He's so like, he's like the art, you're like the archivist and like reference librarian for all music.
I'm like the anarchist.
Right, yeah, too. But we saw this documentary about Jeff Lynne, and he recorded, and and he is obviously, we all know he is like the recording master, what his recordings sound like, and he recorded everything in his house. And I was like, oh well, his house is probably set up like a studio. It wasn't. He didn't have a studio. He didn't have like a traditional studio. He literally would just go. I mean, we saw these rooms on this documentary where they were just like, okay, there's like a garden room he has with a bunch of plants that he did something in. And then there's like this hallway with these bookshelves that he set up a vocal mic in for one song. And I was like, wow, that is so cool that this guy who is such a stickler for sounds and engineering and production is recording vocals in his hallway of his house. And I thought, wow, that like sort of
next to his stone fireplace.
Yeah. It sort of opened my mind. It sort of opened.
He did. It was like there's this big fire. Oh, just for some reason it resonates.
It sort of opened my mind for that. And so when our engineer suggested that, let's do some of this stuff at your house, we were like this, and plus it was great because we didn't have to go anywhere.
Right.
Could roll out of bed, throw on some pants if I wanted to, and go sing a song. So
yeah, half the album she wasn't even wearing pants.
Oh, I never wear pants. Anyway, so that sort of opened our minds about, there you go.
Yeah. No, because there is that kind of mystique of going to the place, and I think it's a good separation of the two too. And I agree, you want to work with someone who on the other end of it. Like I think I've been learning personally that you can't do everything. Well, you can if you put enough time into it, but your buddy over here has been learning how to engineer and produce forever. Work with him, work on writing the song. You don't need to learn the banjo part. You got a friend who plays banjo, bring him in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like part of this is utilizing your friend's abilities to share the thing you're making. And I don't know, like, cause with like kind of the touch on like the YouTubes and the interwebs, you can figure anything out, which is amazing. But also knowing when to utilize someone else's skills is such a big deal. And like you said, if they're good enough, they can make the bookshelf room sound great, the library.
Yeah, and they, and in the case of our guy, and I know a lot of engineers. And I'm using the word engineer. A lot of these guys are producers too, but engineering is such a. I mean, it's a skill, but it's also a talent. I think you just have this innate ability to make things sound good or hear things a certain way, and that is something that I think we all really need to appreciate.
Right. And also like a psychological thing too. Like when you're running through vocal takes and like he's trying to figure out where you're trying to get it and what the record needs and how to have that conversation where it doesn't upset either partner. You know what I mean? Or even like if you're anything, if you're laying down a lead or laying down a bass line, he's like, you got to be able to, as an engineer producer, get what's right for the track, but also have that communication link with the artist that doesn't say we're done today. You know what I mean? Like,
you're basically a therapist,
right? Right. Because
so.
As soon as that red button turns on, you're like, oh my God, I sound like this. You know what I mean? Like, personally, like recording vocals, I'm like, okay, let's do it again. Let me try it again. And like, I'm going to try to use the soft palate more up so it doesn't sound nasally or whatever. And they're like, it didn't sound nasally to begin with. What you need, it's such a weird, like, self-revealing thing, and you have to like be comfortable with the person behind there, and they have to be willing to go through 9 takes, I guess.
Absolutely. You have to be super willing to, I mean, you are bearing yourself. So in the case of like vocals, for example, you have to be super aware of, you're going to be really embarrassed about a lot of things maybe, and they don't care, and they don't think of it as embarrassing, and I mean, I don't know how these guys can sit and listen to like 36 vocal takes of the same thing.
Right.
Not that it takes 36 vocal takes, but I mean, I've done some stuff in 1 take and we're like, oh my, or, we'll use the first take. We're like, it just had magic. And then other times I'm like 16 takes later, I'm still not happy with it, so
I totally relate to that. Do you chunk your way through it? Like, let me sing through the verse. All right, let's do the verse again. Okay, let's do the verse. Or do you do the whole song?
Both.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll just do the whole song just to get a feel. And actually our engineer producer who we've worked with forever and we just love him, he generally likes to try to get as real a take as possible. Sometimes I'll go, should I just punch that in? And he'll go, no, just sing that whole line again so that we can, after we get a take that we like, kind of thing. But usually he'll say, do the whole song a couple times just so that we can see if we can get as real a take as possible. I mean, I like doing it both ways. I don't mind doing it a whole song. And then, and then after a while, I might say, you know what, I just want to concentrate on these 2 verses. So yeah, it's both ways, which keeps it fresh. And I also sometimes like, again, our guy, Mike Hagler, I should mention his name. He like knows me so well. I trust him. Sometimes I'll steer the ship if I'm, vocals. But I really trust him to know me and what I can do and what I'm capable of that particular day. I mean, it's really like, and again, I think we all need to appreciate the art of engineering / producing and people who know you and know what you can know what you're capable of and can push you or not push you,
Right. And like,
and we know each other so well that it doesn't matter if, we both have thick skins. So, he can say, Chloe, that sucked. You can do it better. Although he's actually never said that, but he could if he wanted to, and it wouldn't hurt my feelings. So,
but yeah, and working with the same guy for a while, they learn they learn your quirks and where you need to go. And like, I think there's a comfort thing too with that relationship, like being able to allow yourself to kind of mess up and be like, I need to do this again. No, let me just to kind of be willing to direct yourself that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Takes a while. Yeah.
And I can't tell today because it's still early for me, but I do also like commercial voiceover for my day job.
Yeah. And, that's cool.
So I'm used, it's great when you're working and it sucks when you're not. Yeah. But, it's like very much a feast or famine kind of. I've been doing it for many years, so it's what I do, and that's why I'm a little gearheady microphone and recording kind of gearhead. But actually, I'm a gearhead for music, which helps in voiceover. But yeah, so I'm sort of used to also having to. I'm actually very good at taking direction because that's what I have to do for my day job for talking, and so. I think that has actually been, I mean, it's been good for both careers, for the music and for the voiceover, because for me, voiceover is much more like music. People call us voice actors, but I think music is so much more aligned with voiceover than acting is. Unless you're doing like a animation, where you're acting as a character. But as far as just the 90% of the other voiceover I do, I think is much more related to music.
That's really interesting.
And so that's why I work. That's why I like really working with other people to either direct me or help me get my best work. But I also can sort of do it on my own because I do a lot of the voiceover on my own, especially auditions, where I just have to use my own judgment and. So there you go.
Like with one, I definitely agree. I was picking Steve Bloom's mind on some chat with like the dynamics of music in voice acting, right? Because that guy does a bunch of characters and stuff. But like for voiceovers too, like there's cadence. There's so much like musically that rhythmic and like that falls.
Oh my God, you hit it.
Like falls into it. So like. Was this something you were doing before diving into music?
No, no. And it was, again, it's another story.
Right. But that's so interesting.
No, I fell into it super accidentally, and it was just from, somebody, an advertising producer had come to one of our shows years ago and had said he wanted me to audition for, I guess I'll just tell the story. He saw our band. And after the show, he said, "Your voice is great." I was talking to it's just my talking to the audience voice. He said, "I'd love for you to audition for I won't say the name, for a beer commercial that I'm because I hear you're the voice I hear." And I thought he meant, singing. And I was like, sure, I've sung little jingly stuff and stuff. And he's like, no, it's for voiceover. And I said, I'm not interested. And he said, you are like, when you were talking to the audience, that was the voice I heard for this commercial. And so he twisted my arm. I said, okay. I've had a lot of experience behind a microphone. I'm like, how different can it be? It is different. But anyway, I auditioned. I went to this fancy studio downtown, auditioned, and was very inexperienced at voiceover. But I guess I'm sort of natural at it. So I got the gig. And I had auditioned. It was between me and the client wanted a male voice originally, and the producer wanted a female voice. And so I got the gig. And that's kind of how I started. And it was sort of natural for me. And I think it was natural for me because of music. And I was used to working in a studio, used to being behind a microphone. I didn't mind the way I sounded in a microphone, where some people get into it and they're like, oh my God, I sound so weird when I hear myself in headphones. And I still think that, but everybody does. Anyway, so that's what happened. So it was basically from music. And I was the first woman to ever do this particular beer company's voice. That was kind of, so that's how I got into it. And then other producers heard me, and then I did other jobs, and I joined the union, and because you have to after like a certain job. And then there you go. And then I got an agent, and it was a weird, it's not a great story for other voiceover people who really do this and studied it and went to school for it, or tried to hone their craft, because I just sort of accidentally fell into it, and I never really, I sort of learned on the job. But now it's all this.
That's, well, just being in the right place and working on it from a different angle. And sometimes those accidental gigs pay. So like one interesting like kind of question on that would be like after doing doing those type of gigs, how did that affect you musically?
You know how it affected me? I feel terrible that I'm just talking about me this whole time while Brad here is falling asleep. No, I'm kidding.
I got some questions for Brad too. I know. This is really cool.
We're married, so he's used to me being the loud.
The questions will be. So, Brad, when Chloe's doing her voiceover, you think her voiceover work?
No. So it did. So here's how I will tell you how it affected me, and it's interesting because it sort of affected me for this record. So it is a different. Although I really feel like it's related. Again, when you said like cadence and rhythm and timing, that's why I think musicians and comedians do really well at voiceover, because it's all about like rhythm and timing. So I did feel like I would sometimes musically, I was getting too slick a little bit. Although voiceover, modern day voiceover is much more natural than what most people think of. They're like, oh, you have to have a great radio voice. That's not really the case, although I can do that great radio voice. I'm not doing it now, but mostly it's natural, but it's still a little slicker in a lot of ways. And so there were times when I would be, doing vocals or just, thinking of the way the song should sound, in general. And my mindset was that it was too polished, too slick, too quote commercial unquote. And so I have to get out of that mindset sometimes, which I think is good. It's a good exercise,
right?
To transfer trying to be very professional and polished into something where musically we want to be a little bit more real and raw and not so polished.
Right, but just understanding the tools, because the voice is such a weird, like, some days I can hit the G all the way up there, but most days I can't, and it's coming out of you. It's not like you can see it. Like on piano, G's here or whatever, like, so it's a much more, like, weird, vague process to learn. But that's
I mean, you do learn to control your voice. I mean, I do have a pretty good control over what I want, over like pitch and, if I want to go higher or lower or gravelly or whispery or, kind of a sexy voice. And so that is nice to be able to control your voice. And it does come in handy if I want a certain kind of mood for singing, although I feel like I do use way different muscles for singing than I do for talking. So, but they are good tools to use.
Very cool.
Clearly I can't talk without a script. So,
well, also that's, that's a thing too. So Brad, when Chloe's doing her vocal, no. But, the kind of spin off, one thing I found interesting, you were saying that, Brad, you have this like this amazing archive of music in your brain. I found interesting that, is it true that you've documented every gig that you've done?
Yes.
So that's it. But
yeah.
That's cool.
Go
like,
ahead.
I wish I had that like ability to be that disciplined and like, how'd last night go? I don't want to think about it, but like to be able to be like, well, it's here. Like that's the thing, right? It's like a journal where you track every gig. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And when I started doing it 100 years ago, I didn't really think about it. It was just, hadn't really been in a band before. And I was like, up to that point, it's like, oh man, I'm going to play drums and I want to be in a band and I want to be like this and I want to do that. And when
you were like a teenager, you were thinking these things.
I was, a very young teenager. And so yeah, and then I finally was, and then I played, some dances type of thing, which they actually had back in those days, and high school and stuff. And I'd only done like 1 or 2 or 3 of those. And my mom gave me like this hardback, like journal, accounting journal. Do you want this? And I go, oh yeah, maybe I'll draw in it or write something in it. And they're like, oh, I know, I should put my gigs in it and keep a little track of my shows that I'm playing. And that's where it all started. And I just kept it up meticulously until here it is, 2022, and we played a gig, and it's that gig or 2 has been entered into it. And so anyway, just kept it up all the way through without missing a hitch, So,
so how many gigs is it? Let's tell him how
I'm
many
up
gigs.
to 35 gigs.
No.
I'll have you know, I've almost filled the first page.
What's the exact number?
Actually, I went through that whole book, and then I'm partway through another one. I started in the mid 90s, so I'm like at 4,000.
Jeez.
326 or 336 or something. I don't know.
I feel like after.
Oh, you have to know the exact number.
Well, I don't, because it keeps changing, and I am working on my book, and of all my stories and history stuff, and I did a cutoff point of at 2020 was when I wrote the book, actually, and
or when you started.
When
you started the book, right?
Yes, that's when I started writing the book, but I finished it all. I mean,
I see, yeah.
In the book,
right.
I'm just going up to 2020, and so it's hard to. I don't know. I've played some gigs.
The year of our doom, 2020.
Right.
So I've played, some gigs since then. So I don't know the exact number. I can go look.
Yeah. But anyway, he's had a lot of. That's a lot of gigs for.
And every one of them were great. And very smooth and
very successful. And everyone called us back, and the band always left happy.
Yeah, and I made so much money at every gig.
Right.
I mean, these are gigs. I don't know if you know his history, but he's been on a couple major labels and then has done arena tours and also, you're from Ohio, a gig at Bernie's Bagels. I don't know if you remember that. It plays in Columbus. It's in Columbus.
Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
No, Oh, you're in Cleveland?
Yeah, I'm a Cleveland guy.
Oh, okay. I was thinking you were Columbus.
So you're, I played the old music hall there, which I don't think's there anymore.
No.
Actually, the last time I played there, I've been playing drums with the Romantics for since 2004, whatever. Right. And then, of course, the last 2 years.
You had your own major label.
I did a lot before that, obviously, but. One of our gigs we played was for some Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, and we were in the building, and there's all these, everybody from Sam the Sham to Jody Watley to some guy from the Eagles, and anyway we played in the War, Lonnie Jordan from War, and anyway it was like this big thing, and we played it. But when I'm looking in this old theater, I'm going, God, this theater looks familiar. And they go, oh, this is the old, I forget, they had a different name for it, but when I had played there before, they go, oh, this is the old music hall. And I go, oh, wow. And I had played there way back when with on a Van Halen tour.
Right.
So I had played there 2 nights at the music hall, but club-wise, there was a club there called the Pirates Den.
Yeah.
And it was like a well-known early punk and
right. Perubu played there a lot.
Oh my God, Devo, everybody played there. I played there a couple times.
I was going to ask you because I'm aware. I wanted to focus on the handcuffs because I'm sure a lot of people go deep with you. But I was interested in I read about a gig you did with Devo when Bowie was trying to sell them the Brian Eno or get them signed.
Yeah, that was my band Screams.
Right.
And November of 1977.
And what were you wearing? I'm kidding. Because he knows.
I could almost tell you.
He's got a crazy
one of those
photographic memory.
photographic memory. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
But
Elephant.
yeah, we played at Max's Kansas City, and we opened for Devo, and yes, Bowie was there, and it's documented, and there's a live Devo album from that night, and it's in the rock and roll history books that David Bowie was there. Not one mention of Screams, who were on the bill that night. But
and they did end up getting on a on a proper I hate saying major label because that's just so dumb and old school. But they did right. But they did get they were a major label band that did.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
their own.
It's kind of like Elvis Presley, getting an interview, and he goes, "Oh God, I hate to keep mentioning that Louisiana hayride thing."
I don't know. I don't even know what that means.
But at the time, I was like, "Oh, you played the Louisiana." Right. But anyway, yes, we did that, and we were there, and it was cool.
I mean,
it was neat.
This is real interesting. Coming from Ohio, Devo being one of these bands that are so weird and unique, and maybe the perfect way that Ohio is weird and artsy in its own way, but to be there in that moment, it's interesting that because you guys, the Screamers toured with Van Halen on their first tour, and I think it was it's Screams. Screamers.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's early for me too.
No worries.
It's just Screams, and we did Van Halen's first headlining tour.
Right.
What was for the second album. So we're there actually out of the clubs, and we're playing pretty big halls and theaters, and 5,000 people or so per city. That was their goal, I think. So,
jeez.
But even though some of them were 7,000, 8,000, but they wanted at least 5,000.
It's so funny to say that, as their first headlining tour, those days, 5,000 to 7,000 was huge. Nowadays, people are playing 40,000 people stadiums, and it's
well, the tour before
whatever.
their first album, they had played clubs and things because they had played. We're from Illinois actually, and obviously, and there was a club in Peoria, and our manager for Screams, we had our own PA system, as all bands did back then. It's before clubs actually had a lot of PAs and sound systems and things. And so they rented our sound system for that Van Halen show. And it was at a club. And they just took off from that first album. And then by second album, they're playing 5,000 seat halls already, So it was interesting, yes.
I'm going to add to that Devo story super quick. So we went to a Devo, it was a Blondie Devo show years ago. Yeah. And we were guests of
one of the... I looked at it.
Don't say when it was. Don't spoil it for Dave. Don't spoil it for Dave. So it was actually shortly before Bob too passed away, which I'm so glad I got to meet them because he also did voiceover and we had a conversation about it. But anyway, we were in, I don't know whose dressing room we were in. We were guests of one of the bands and we were in Devo's dressing room. They were I'm ruining their rock and roll cred. They were the nicest, most fun people to talk to. They totally remembered that show.
They weren't necessarily party people.
No,
they were just real down to earth.
No, we weren't we're not party people either, but
we had walked in and I introduced myself and said, I know you don't know who I am and blah, blah, blah.
But they did remember.
But I said, I was on the bill that night and they were like, oh, wow. Oh, okay. Hey. And they were calling other band members and, hey,
this guy was at that.
He was in Screams that played on the bill. And I was like, oh.
So anyway, it was pretty exciting to meet them. And I have to say, if you ever saw them, that was the first time I'd ever seen them live. And it was, sort of, I guess would it be considered like a reunion tour for them or something?
They tour once in a while.
Were one of the most amazing bands I've ever seen. So musical and so sonically interesting. That actually really taught me a lot and inspired me seeing them play. And they were just the nicest, coolest, most down-to-earth folks. So Ohio, yay.
That's amazing.
So go Ohio. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. You guys keep going on that because
because we're digressing. I feel bad.
I was just going to say real quick, it was kind of funny when we were talking to him in the dressing room about that night. And yes, Bowie was there to introduce them. And, it was when it was the Bowie-Eno partnership.
Right.
And I guess they had got a cassette from him or something from Devo. And they're like, wow, who's this band? And they got totally into it. Anyway, Bowie was there to plug them to the A&R people. And so Mark Knopfler, not Mark Knopfler, what was his name? Mark
Knopfler?
I don't know.
Mothersbaugh?
Mothersbaugh.
Okay.
It's kind of the same thing. It's kind of about the same weirdness of Mothersbaugh
right.
and Knopfler.
Okay.
But anyway, he goes, it was such a weird thing, It was like, and they only had a couple singles out, like on Stiff and Bump, and they weren't signed yet or anything, and they were still clubbing it. But he said, it was weird. Here's David Bowie. He's up there talking and plugging us, going, this next band is just incredible, and Brian Eno and I are just knocked out, and this is the band of the future, and this is what music will be, and just going on. And then Mark said, he goes, meanwhile, I'm thinking, and we'll be sleeping in our van on the streets of New York tonight. Building them up so much. You go, we're like sleeping in our van,
I can't imagine something better than having Bowie say such cool stuff about you. So
right.
that's pretty amazing. And yet they're still so down to earth and cool. So
right. Well, they're sleeping in the van. There's a beauty to
exactly.
There's a beauty to the hype, like the glory of it in the reality, the duality of that split. Like even just doing music, I'm sure, Brad, you've had plenty of tours where like, whose place are we crashing at now? Or we don't got enough to get to that one. We're canceling that gig. But I mean, like there's such like a duality to like, oh man, you get to do music for a living, but I'm working always. Like there's like I don't know. I find it a comforting like thing to be like, oh, cool, I get to do this thing and be obsessed with it always. And I guess that's a way to control that mindset. But like, compared to like, but some people, I was just talking with a friend of mine who's been doing doing kind of like the cover gigs, and like he was saying that like he's looking at his friends who worked corporate gigs, and like he's like, they can afford to fix their bathroom. He's like, I can just keep the toilet going, or fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And like kind of being upset with that, but also being like, but I wouldn't have done any other way,
Yeah, and I have to say, as far as Brad, who's gone from like the heady days of, rock and roll tour buses and arenas and things like that, he's transitioned very gracefully and happily into this sort of new modern era of digital music and doing things on your own, and and not I guess going from rock star to musician.
I can actually use a fork and a knife now.
Yeah, you can use, no, but I'm saying never really, there was never that, to having producers produce you, to being able to self-produce. And, and I think that's also like a sign of really having it in you. You're a musician, you're not just, you're not a rock star, you're a musician, which I think there's a big difference.
You want to keep curiosity, and you want to keep growing,
Right.
Yeah. And it's, it's like we played a gig in Nashville. The Handcuffs played a gig in Nashville. I don't know when it was. Time has no reference to me now because of the pandemic. I don't know when things happened. Right. I know. Right. Right. Yeah. So we played a gig in Nashville, and friends of ours sort of arranged it, and we played with them. And the band who played first was Bill Lloyd's band. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know who Bill Lloyd is. He, but it was like just like a group of guys who, just got together from Nashville and would, when they were all in town kind of thing. And Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick was in the band, who Brad knew because he had toured with them. And I'm not trying to name drop, Paul McCartney says I name drop way too much. No, I'm kidding. That's a terrible joke. That's like a dad joke. No, I don't know. I've never met Paul McCartney, making that clear. Anyway, Tom
Mark
Peterson.
Knopfler said this.
Mark Ronson. Mark, is that the guy's name? Mark Ronson? Mick Mick. Right.
Mark Spitz.
Mark Spitz. God, that's like a...
It's like, what?
Right.
Where? That's the first time that name has been mentioned in 45 years.
Anyway, so it was at this tiny, awesome, tiny little kind of divey club called The Basement, which I don't even think is there anymore. It was all, what was it, like 7 years ago or something? Anyway, so like really tiny club. It was awesome. It was one of my favorite gigs ever because it was small and kind of raw. And again, just like very rock and roll, old school rock and roll. And Tom Peterson was just in town and he played with the first band. And he's a really good example of, this guy has played, Madison Square Garden and has toured all over the world. And he was fine.
Budokan.
Yeah, right. I mean, playing, this tiny little gig with this group of friends before us from Chicago. And he stayed the whole night and we hung out. And it was just like that to me, like also was a great lesson. Like someone who did not need to do that, but could not do it because that's his in his soul.
He was happy to be there, and he's up there like trying out the amp that was provided on stage.
And he had absolutely
not being a prima donna.
No attitude. No, he was like the most. It was like it taught again another life lesson about real musicians, the stuff that it's in their heart and soul, and that's kind of. I thought that was amazing. It's like, he doesn't care if it's not Madison Square Garden. He's playing a gig because he loves music so much. He loves playing so much. Yeah, it was pretty badass to see that and to experience that. And again, like, Brad knew him. And, they hung out and they're buds, all, but it was just.
And he called us the next day on our drive back.
I know, he called us the next day.
He said, man, The Handcuffs, what a cool band.
You guys were great. And
you guys got great parts. I love your song.
And we were like, how cool is that? That's
so bad.
And so, yeah, when sometimes your heroes are just normal folks who love what they do so much that they're just sort of like you in a way.
Well, they show you it's possible, and they show you that if you put your time in, perseverance is going to equal success to some degree, and it doesn't always have to look like stadium tours, but it can look like you inspiring the people around you to do what they want to do. And
and also, and just knowing that you're, again, there's, people who are true musicians and it's just in their bodies and in their hearts and in their souls. They just will do it no matter what the gig is, because it's something that they cannot not do. They can't live without doing it. And it just gives them so much joy. And that is something that's really inspiring.
Yeah. To kind of like dive into one thing I wanted to kind of pick your guys' brain about, and maybe like starting with Brad, with like the whole being a drummer, you're like you're kind of like the conductor of the band to some degree. You're seeing all these dynamics and songs build and shift, and you get to see out to the crowd, if depending, I guess, on the lights or the room situation, how they react to it. So when you started to write songs for like projects like the Screams or Screams, not the Screams, or like Handcuffs. I'm making sure I'm doing it right. I'm doing my due diligence now. Or Big Hello, and like all these projects that you're putting your own songs to. Was that kind of a product of like being in bands and like seeing how they react and like learning how to write that way? Or was this something that you always done and like just had like melodies and stuff in your head and just like would write them out? Because as a drummer, I always find that like as a guy with a guitar or something, there's chords I can bounce off of. And same with you, Chloe. Like, are you like basing like melodies off stuff in your head that's coming out, or do you like have like an instrument that you're kind of like laying down like music to kind of come up with stuff over top of it? I know that's a big shift, but like from where we left off, but like seeing how like he reacted to the Handcuffs, I think that's a like amalgamation of everything that you guys have worked on so far to be where it's at. So, like, as far as like a songwriting process.
Yes.
No. I'm going to just say one super quick thing, and then I'm going to have Brad answer. So Brad, when I met Brad and he found out he was a songwriter, I loved his songs when I first heard his songs, when we first met. And then when I understood, or I didn't understand, when I learned the process that he uses to write songs, it was sort of mind blowing to me. And as a drummer, another thing that I learned throughout my career, as a drummer, he doesn't write songs as a drummer. He writes songs as a musician. And he doesn't really play any other instruments, although he can. I mean, he can like pick stuff up and figure something out, but it's not like he's going to go out and do a show playing guitar or anything. But he writes primarily it's like all in his head, like almost like how a composer, like how Beethoven would write music down and write all the parts and write the instrumentation and compose a symphony, in his head. And so that's sort of how Brad writes music. And now I'll let you take it. Is that an accurate description? You're sort of like a Beethoven of rock and roll.
I guess.
And you're sort of deaf. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I've always had melodies and
hooks,
lyric ideas and stuff floating around in my head. And excuse me. And when I was working on my book, it's so funny to say that, but
it's pretty cool though.
I've and not just my gig book, but my whole life, I've just documented stuff and wrote stuff down. I don't know, I'm like part Rain Man or something. And even my old band members, even at this point, once in a while, like on a Facebook post or something, that they'll chime in, band members or crew guys from 30 years ago or whatever. Like, you were always writing stuff down anyway. And it's like, it's true. But anyway, when I was putting it together, I was going through all these old notebooks I've saved and books. Anyway, I found this like little journal from like when I was like, I don't know, like 12 or something. And it's kind of basically ground zero of when I first started writing down lyrics and having melodies. I actually documented it. I was on vacation with my grandparents. And it was kind of funny. I said, I wrote this little poem thing. Oh, and I wrote this little kind of melody. Oh, I wrote a song today in my head. But anyway, it's like, and I had written that down. And then the next day, still on vacation with my grandparents for like, it's like, oh, I wrote another one today. This is fun. It's kind of funny.
This is fun.
It's so weird. It's like, oh God, it has to have been like when I first discovered it. I was, bored in the back seat of a car the size of a whale, So that's, I hear songs in my head and then I just have to explain them and hum them out to everybody, all the parts. And generally, a lot of times when I hear stuff, the songs aren't finished, but they almost are. I can hear like the sounds of them and the way they're supposed to be recorded. And I hear, in between these lines, I hear, this weird things like that. Like I hear like a production thing already. So it's just trying to find people like, and be with people like Chloe, who understands my alien way of writing songs. And she kind of...
I'm sort of your translator sometimes.
Yeah. But, I had a couple albums and record deals, not albums, but record deals and bands long before I met Chloe. But anyway, and I'd always written songs that way.
I was in like junior high.
Yeah.
No, I was in nursery school.
Oh,
I don't know if you can hear our cat meowing. I'm sorry.
No, I totally. You guys,
Okay.
right when we were trying to figure out the Zoom thing, my cat was just like, "Now's the time," and was like, "That's part of why I messed up the email a few times because
that's okay.
He was cat attacking Snuggles, but
yeah, she's Snuggles. Is that your cat's name?
No, that's what he was doing.
Oh, okay.
That's what he was doing.
Okay. Okay.
He was just trying. He's like, "Now you're not doing anything right now, dude." And I'm like, "I'm trying to do stuff." He's like, "Ah," but so no, cats are totally fine.
Okay,
but
good.
It's
Wait. I was just going to say real quick, and you had mentioned, back there playing drums and seeing people's responses, and
I know you totally hit that too. That was great.
I do. And I'm aware of audience reactions and things, and I suppose that kind of enters into some things. It's kind of like an interview thing I read years ago with Pete Townsend, and he said for a while he was writing songs. This is back in the probably late 60s or something, early 70s, kind of around Tommy period maybe, or even Who's Next or whatever. He said he kind of got into a habit of a thing. It was like, oh, I'm going to write songs that fits our show, like, like, blah, 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 just big chords. Oh, I can jump on that. And this would be a good part. I could do this, and Keith can do this. And he said he wrote songs based on that, on part of their show thing. So, to start going along with their performance as well. So I suppose some of that enters into it at some point, but by watching the audience reactions to certain bits, I always notice, a crowd really responds to this kind of a song or this kind of a part. And sometimes I'll enter that into a song,
Yeah.
But having said that, we also write the way we write, and we write for us. And although it is, we do want to please an audience because, you do sort of need that a little bit, but mostly it's, we write the way we write because it's sort of comes from us, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. It usually starts with sometimes a song title, sometimes a riff, an opening riff or something. Oh, that'd be a good, that's really catchy. It's sticking in my head. I'm going to base a song around that. So kind of like, in a way, kind of like our new single, I Cry For You. You started.
I think I was sitting on the couch,
you
just mindlessly, mindlessly playing something on guitar. And he goes, "Oh, that's cool. Do that again." And I was like, "Oh, if I can remember." So I did. And I think we recorded it on our phone. And then we sort of built the song around that.
And now it's number one all over the world.
All over the world of our imagination.
No, it's interesting because I always with people who write songs and drum, I've always because it's kind of an interesting spot to be in the band because it's kind of like everyone's following you, but you can engage in a different way.
Are you a drummer?
I'm not a drummer, but I have friends who are drummers. Okay. I teach a little bit of drums, like I was saying before, but I would never be in the band as the drummer. My bass player's laughing hysterically right now. But I a guitar guy and a songwriter.
So is ours.
And so I'm always interested in the process of I took away the thing that I used to write. How would that happen? And I relate a lot to having that ghost of an idea. I know there should be a clave here, but what should play it and where should I place it? You know what I mean? Or fill in the blank. And you have this vague thing, and sometimes just putting the person in the spot, they knock it out. And then sometimes you gotta have this weird cryptid message that you have to describe. I guess my question with that would be through the process of the Handcuffs and because I've noticed from the first record, because I hope I usually ask more deep dive questions at the beginning, but since we kind of hit it off so kind of naturally, I was just rolling with it. But I went through all the records and I've noticed there was a strong switch from the first record to the second record with what seems to be kind of layering in production, or composition wise. And was that a thing that you guys were practicing, working on yourself, or was that just a product of the songs? Does that kind of make sense? Or was that a goal? Yeah, this record, we're gonna layer or what's the texture wise, pay more attention to things, or was it just?
I think it was
Sorry.
I think it's both. Oh, that's okay. I think it's both the things you mentioned that Brad and I, ever since we met, we hit it off musically, even before we were a couple. It was like, we just always hit it off musically, and we always had like a very, I guess, what would be the word, common thread with all of our work relationship and our songwriting and our production was always that we always evolved, and the evolution took place for many reasons. You get older, you discover new things, you listen to different music, you're in a different mood, whatever, but we always wanted to evolve, like songwriting wise and production wise and recording wise and anything musically. So some of it was like a conscious effort to do something different. And I think some of it is just our natural. We just like evolving, and a good example of that, I guess, would be like the Beatles, who, it is a far cry from, I Want to Hold Your Hand to, I Dig a Pony.
Right. Right.
There's that evolution. Those are just off the top of my head songs. There's that evolution, and oh my God, I am not remotely comparing us to the Beatles at all. So, but that's just the first band I could think of where you can really hear an evolution. But we've always liked the evolution. And I think it's because first of all, it's interesting for us. Secondly, we're always learning things. And thirdly, it just feels natural to evolve. So we do sometimes like even with this new record, we did, even though it's a little bit probably more sort of old school feeling, but that is an evolution for us because it's what we've been listening to, what we sort of wanted to evoke, how we wrote. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, comparing like Mickey 66, right, to like Baby Boombox. There's like a whole different layer of textures there, but like with this new one, with that first when that piano kicks on the first track, like that's a whole it's like heavy. It's like heavier than everything. And like I
love that you named those two songs too, actually. That's pretty cool.
For when I was going through them, I'm like, these are the ones that got stuck in my head the most. And
I love that.
Baby Boombox, I love the Clash call-outs and the Big Audio Dynamite call-outs in it.
Oh, thanks.
And that riff that I don't know if it was a bass riff at first or a guitar riff at first, but like that's a catchy, cool, like that's a metal lick with it's cool, man.
Yeah.
How'd that come about?
Nice
on a side note,
say.
Like who wrote that riff? That riff is rad.
That was you. That was Brad.
Very cool.
Brad is
you
a
mean
riff.
the opening?
Yeah,
that one. That's Brad's like a freaking. You are a riff master. I have to say.
I don't know.
He really is.
I almost every day of my life I have a riff in my head, and I like go hum it into a recorder of some sort, or my phone.
Yeah.
But anyway, just a riff in there, and the kind of also inspired. Kind of has a early Bow Wow Wow. That whole Burundi beat kind of thing I wanted to incorporate and into that song, and it probably just started with a riff and that Burundi drum beat thing. It's like, what can I go with this?
Meanwhile, our record label is like, why are you talking about a song from 4 albums ago? I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
But it pans into the new one, like that's really interesting because like one like musically everything like going through these, I'm like, oh, that's catchy. I see where they're going with the title here, and that pans out really well. I'm like making notes to myself. I'm like, oh, this is really cool how this is panning out, and like because I'm always mentally trying to like solve the puzzle like that. No, I don't think anyone really cares about. They're like, yeah, it's a good song or it's not. But in my head, I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing here, and like that pans out there, or at least trying to in my head interpret it. But it's that I find that as a drummer really interesting, like because certain rhythm, like any music, even if you're playing wrong notes, you can wail on a note that's out of key if you got a cool rhythm to it, and then now the song's completely different and catchy and unique.
Absolutely.
I mean, if the song, when I write songs, Chloe and I, we kind of have different styles. I love Chloe's songs, and
well, you have to say that.
No,
I know you don't. He said that since I've met him, so that's very nice.
Yeah, that sold me on stuff, and it was great. And but I'm all about. I don't know why. If it doesn't stick in my head, or I just try to find things that are catchy and that even just like Baby Boombox, not even without the riff. If you just did the drum beat, that's almost like a riff in itself.
Yeah,
and, you do a lot of drum riffs though, which is the coolest. One of the coolest things about you is that you play drums like it's a melodic instrument.
Well, I try. That's what the drummers that I grew up liking played stuff that stuck in my head. Like, wow, that was different. And man, that drum riff just keeps sticking in my head. Or
like a cool drum fill that is like iconic to a song,
Yeah, that kind of things. Like, even if it's super simple, it's as simple as Born to Be Wild, Steppenwolf, or something going way back. But who doesn't air drum to that middle part? Boom, ba-da, boom, ba-da, boom, ba-da, boom, da. Who doesn't like when that part comes up? That's a drum hook, just weird things like that. And and it's been written a number of times in my career. Man, I was listening to the record, and you got like drum hooks. You write like drum hooks, So anyway, that's part of the process of coming up with a catchy song. And our new single, "I Cry for You." If you listen to that, there's a fill I do kind of throughout. It's at the end of each verse or the beginning of each verse. I go ba-da-doo, ba-da-doo, all the way through the whole thing. And to me, it's almost kind of like
that's the hook of the song.
Like,
or one
Get
of
Off
the
My Cloud by the Rolling Stones.
Right.
It's almost like a drum riff, a drum hook throughout. So anyway, just pointing that out, and you might have known it anyway. And so,
I come. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say no. That's cool. Keep going.
I come from we come from very different schools of music thought. I was I was a huge jazz fiend growing up, and I'm still a jazz fiend. But I learned, I was like, I honestly wasn't even into rock and roll until way after.
How dare you?
I don't know. I mean, I was super into jazz. I know. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
How dare you?
Okay, big man. Anyway.
Ow.
Yeah.
It's like a Batman slap.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So you boys and your Batman. Anyway, so I came from like jazz and theory. Like I'm a big theory head. And Brad is not. He is not. He although he is super musical, he doesn't know theory and notes and, time or not time signatures, like, key signatures and that kind of thing. And that kind of thing. So it was when we first met, like it's different now because we're so used to each other. But when we first met, it was just like, I'm, like figuring, oh, okay, this is like an F major seventh, or this is, and he's like, no, it's just this chord and it sounds like this. And he'd sing like the triad or something. And so it was, for me, it was sort of like, the good thing is I've always been used to improvising because I sort of grew up as a jazzer and I, my favorite, I would listen in high school while my friends were listening to, the latest radio rock and roll. I would be up in my bedroom, like transcribing Charlie Parker solos, and, probably much to my parents' delight and dismay. So like, what is wrong with her? And, oh, that's kind of cool. But, so I was really into like figuring out the theory of it and the notes and, this and that. And then also, wanting to improvise so that, you don't necessarily play a riff over and over again. You improvise and you play 124 bars of crazy soloing stuff.
I've played way over 124 bars.
So,
pull out the
book.
Right, exactly.
See, I know my music, and I've played way over 124 bars.
I just got that joke, bars. That's funny. Okay, that was good, Brad.
Thanks.
That was good, That was good, Groucho. Anyway,
I'll be here all year.
So you'll be here all year. So yeah, so it was, so I come, and so right. I don't know what the point of my saying that was, but and I'm still a little bit like, I'll still chart stuff out, not like with notes, but like, just like chord changes or whatever. And just because you kind of can't take the girl out of the jazz. I mean, you can take the girl out of the jazz. You can't take the jazz out of the girl. But and I don't sing or play jazzy at all, except in another side project I do, but on a different instrument. But that's again neither here nor there. But writing.
I was just gonna say, when I first met you, I don't even think we met yet.
We just talked on the phone.
Yeah, and
talked on the old timey telephone.
On the old timey telephone.
I know.
I think you had sent me a telegram, a
fax
by Pony Express,
a fax on thermal paper.
No, but she had sent me some music demos that she had made, and I really liked the songs that she wrote, but the chords in the song, I thought, wow, that's a cool chord. I like man, this is cool. This is great. So
yes,
she was.
Some of that is like sort of, I have a different way of listening and writing just because of my like theory, right. Like jazz theory, which is both, I guess, good, and it's a bit of a hindrance sometimes in writing rock. And I try to sort of balance the two. Although, jazz is very raw and edgy, and I always say, people talk about like the rock and rollers back in the day being partiers and druggies. And I'm like, you should like look at the history of some of these jazz guys,
Yeah, Charlie Parker went hard.
Yeah. And the stuff and they didn't have the luxury of being like stars, right. or like, I mean, they were stars, but they didn't have the luxury of like, getting to stay in like, beautiful hotels and smash the television and things. Right, so, right. So they're like, they're hardcore. They're the real deal. Those guys,
and it's kind of like Chloe's explaining her thing, and mine is kind of weird, where it's like, and I read another interview many years ago about Brian Eno, who he claims, he goes, I don't really have that much music
knowledge.
Yeah, well, he has knowledge,
not knowledge, music training
type of thing, and he just does what he does, and he hears stuff in his head, and I super related to his debut album, Here Come the Warm Jets. It's very simple, but there's like all these layers. He can take one thing that just keeps repeating and repeating, but he makes it so interesting all throughout. You don't even notice it's the same thing over and over. And that sort of, I do that on some things, not everything, but I was like, oh, wow, it's kind of like, but Robert Fripp was saying, oh yeah, I was, doing these sessions with Eno, and he had this guitar that he hadn't changed the strings on ever. And he was like, goes, like, God, when was the last time you changed your strings? They're so incredibly dead and messed up. And he goes, I don't know. But Robert Fripp says, if I was a guitar player.
Well, he is a guitar player.
No, I mean, if I was Eno, basically, being a guitar player, I would, of course, change these strings immediately. What the hell? He said, but they're so dead and screwed up that it has a really unique, weird sound to it. Can I use this on this recording?
Yeah.
It's that type of thing where it's like things that an actual trained person would maybe overthink and do it in that way.
Right. Almost
where Eno's like, I don't know. And it's just, he goes, man, how'd you get that sound? It's like so bizarre. It's like weird.
It's almost like ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Not that Eno is ignorant or you're ignorant, but it's like sometimes the less you know, the better musically. But then there's things that I've found where I'll switch around a chord just based on my like, let's try this substitution for this chord instead of what we had, and we'll be like,
and so I know, cool, and another thing he said Fripp would be like, you can't play that chord and you can't follow that chord with this chord. He goes, no, that's how I hear it. He goes, but you can't do it because the A, blah, 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 and the C,
Yeah.
you know,
I
whatever.
do that.
Like music theory, you can't do that. It just doesn't work. It goes, well, and he goes, and then, would be like, just trust me, just play it that way. And he goes, well, it works, but it's not supposed to work, So it's that. I'm kind of like that.
Yeah, and I'm
meets Chloe here, so it's like a really cool
balance of the two.
Yeah, it is, and so that's one of the reasons. I mean, obviously we're married and we're partners for life and everything, but like many couples,
we're like handcuffed.
Like many couples. There it is. Like many couples, you go through relationships, at the beginning of relationships, and you break up for a couple weeks, and then if we ever, when we would do that, people would be like, oh, you guys broke up. Like, what are you going to do about music? And we're like, oh, we're still going to work together. we are like the best music partners.
Yeah, we have a loan.
No, that is, oh my God. That was funny.
Kidding.
No, we
have a mortgage to pay.
No, that was before the mortgage. Anyway, no, but we would always still want to work together no matter what. And now, I mean, obviously it's better. And we went through the pandemic together. This is it. We're done. We're together forever.
Yeah, if we can survive that together. Right. No, we were together, obviously, every single day. And it's just like, whatever.
That's awesome. So anyway, I'm so sorry that we've been digressing so much.
No, this is great.
I'm talking about how great we are.
And I haven't even gotten to asking you questions yet.
Well, one thing I wanted to point, it's interesting because both fields, right, rhythmic and kind of pitch oriented, have like their parameters you have to like understand, right? So the parameter of the 4/4 time or the 7/8 time, whatever, you can only fit so many fills in that. Or as a singer, you only have so much range, high or low. So understanding key signatures and what works better for you is a huge advantage you have, because most of like any of it's like kind of self-knowledge to some degree, and theory pans out a lot and works really well to help you gain that. But as you gain that, it's just, it's not fact, it's theory. And when it gets with like Eno and like groups like even Devo, going back to what we were talking about before, like there's a lot of things in that don't make sense but work. And then it becomes now it's a tritone substitution. That's why it works.
Yeah,
you find the
right.
method,
I agree. Yeah.
Prove yourself for why it works. And like, but it's cool because it's a creative process. It's in like the thing that doesn't sound good is the next new thing. Like Miles Davis would play the wrong note, and now it's the hip note to play.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
and also I also try to not change a key. If Brad like brings in a song in a certain key, I mean, every once in a while I will, because I'm just like, I will never get a good performance with this. I find it a challenge and that's part of the fun for me in the creative process, is to figure out what the voice is in a specific key. Again, every once in a while I will, but most of the time I feel like I don't. And even if I write a song, or I start the song and we'll finish it together, or I write the whole song or whatever, I still, even what I wrote it in might not necessarily be what I would ideally sing it in, but I try not to, because I think it makes it more interesting to be able to build the story sonically with how it was originally heard in our heads.
Very cool.
I almost wonder if, and you could answer this, Chloe.
Maybe Audrey could, our cat. She's staring at us.
Do a lot of the things that I present to you originally, is it usually in the same kind of key?
No.
Okay, good.
Sometimes you have specific, I
always wonder keys. That because I have tinnitus really super bad, where my ears ring 24 hours a day for the last 97
but it's
years.
A nice tone. I've heard it. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, right now it's like, So I always wonder if I write songs in that key a lot.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean,
But it's I have like this note in my head constantly, because
I don't know. Maybe you do. I'll have to, next time you bring a song, bring a riff in, I'll have to figure out if it's similar to.
Yeah. Is that the note? Like, yeah.
There once was a note.
That's Brad singing.
Yeah, But no, that's a super fascinating thought, because if you know, like I from being behind the kit, right, and kind of hitting cymbals a lot, like my drummer, he's starting to wear earplugs now because he's like, I'm hearing the hum. I'm like, oh snap.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we wear earplugs. We have customs. Yeah.
Is he?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's bananas.
Except even it was actually a little higher than that in my head, except.
But you've worn earplugs for a gazillion years now.
Yeah.
So
I started, the first 10, 12 years of playing in bands when we were, I'm probably as loud as I always was, but especially back then, you're just cranking it up, just blowing my ears out. And
I actually feel like I wish.
And just even before I was in bands, just playing drums alone,
I wish we would have been aware of that, like in school, because I spent, my school years sitting in front of trumpets and trombones in jazz band. Because I played saxophone. And so, they were in back, and I'm just like, that can't be good for young ears.
Well, growing up, my one grandfather, he was a carpenter his whole life. And then my dad pretty much was too. He could do basically about anything, but he's always building houses and things. But how many times when you were growing up or whatever, you'd be, mainly like probably in the summer, you're walking around and you could actually hear like workers putting on a roof or something like blocks away.
Yeah.
With a hammer. So they were like beating on a snare drum right over, their whole lives. And they were both hard of hearing. So, nowadays they have they have like guns, nail guns that do all that stuff. But I just remember growing up, I just hearing hammering from like blocks away, like, some carpenter just putting on a new roof or whatever they were doing, So it's the same kind of thing.
I've read that the most damaging as far as like hearing is involved is loud and abrupt. So like a hammer hit, like the explosive boom, one hit, that because it peaks. That's the most like if it's like it's loud but it's constant, it's a little different compared to like explosive. That's supposed to be really bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I wonder.
So the lesson is, kids, get earplugs before you play loud rock and roll.
Well, I always see that. I see people, hey, Brad, check out this 3-year-old drummer playing an entire Rush album or something, and I'm like, oh, that's great. I hope the kid got earplugs in, whatever,
Right.
Starting that young,
So have you kind of learning to cope with it? Is it just like trying to completely ignore it or just embrace it? Because that seems really invasive.
I've had it for almost as long as I can remember, so I don't even really think about it.
Okay.
I just, I just write another song. I just write another song
based on it.
No, that's another tonal thing around it. No, but that makes, the guitar feeds back, sometimes it's got a hum to it, but we can still track it. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that's interesting, if I may say, is when we're recording, they're like, "Oh, do you hear that hi-hat or a tambourine or something?" Like, no, like I haven't heard a tambourine or a hi-hat on a album for years and years. At this point, I just have to trust. But at the same time, every once in a while, it'll be like Chloe and Mike, who both have like super human Superman hearing, and I'll go, God, I keep hearing like this weird like click or glitch somewhere. And they're like, oh, we can't. They just keep pulling down tracks, and I don't hear it. Finally, I'll go play, like there won't be anything left, and they'll be like, oh, that's it. I do. There is a thing right there.
There's the squeak of a.
But for some reason, I hear it and they can't hear it. Like
it's almost like a feel for you too. I think you almost like feel things.
Yeah. Well, I'm very like kind of rhythm oriented.
Yeah.
So it's like some kind of some kind of chick. I can like, what is that? I hear like some kind of blip, like a little blah. Anyway, it's funny.
No, it makes sense because like frequencies cancel each other out, especially when you're going through tracks. You know what I mean? Like, so, some things are going to be in phase and out of phase. But that's super interesting. Well, like, I'm glad it doesn't hold you back at all. Like, that's inspiring. I got to tell my drummer he's in good shape. You're fine, bud.
Yeah.
Wear earplugs.
Yeah,
we have the... When I started playing with the Romantics, and they play really loud, and they're known for playing through their AC-30 Vox amps, which are just
the worst because they're so heavy.
They're very biting, they're
heavy,
great amps,
but they're and they sound great, but they're just cranked.
Yeah,
it's not like Marshalls are bigger, but they're kind of warmer. Sometimes I can't even hear a Marshall. It's
on stage.
Kind of has that.
Right.
This one has this weird low tone, where someone like a Fender Twin or AC-30 are just like cutting through and then add that one of them plays a Rickenbacker and the other one plays a Telecaster through that.
Very trebly, okay.
Yep. So and then they're on 10 and they were like just rocking, and then they're looking back like, come on, let's rock. I'm after like the first couple months playing with them, I like, oh man, I got to get like real molded, fitted earplugs or I'm going to be deaf by the end of the year, So I had worn earplugs off and on throughout the years, even before that. But I went to a Sensophonics here in Chicago, which is a well-known audio.
They're amazing.
And they're amazing. And I've gone through, I don't know how many pairs of earplugs, molded earplugs at this point, but they're great. Once you get used to them, you can't live without them, So
I mean, even going to your shows.
I say that just for a tip for maybe yourself or even your drummer or whatever.
The custom ones are actually great.
They're just so awesome.
The best investment, and they're not even that expensive, but in
fact, they have like the little. What do you call it? Little
the
filters.
Attenuators,
and they have like different. Oh, here's where it blocks out.
25 dB, and 15 dB.
Here's the next one. It blocks out even more, and here's the big solid one. At this point, I don't even. I had them make me some without them. They're just
solid.
They're just solid.
Yeah. No, that's
so.
That's awesome. Yeah, like I've been. I got this little keychain with like the cheap ones you get from like wherever, like earplugs I have with me.
It still
all the
helps.
time. Oh
yeah.
And like I won't in bars that are too loud, I'll pop them in and like, why were you quiet then? And I was like, it's
Same. Yeah.
Like, but one thing.
Those that help.
Yeah, no, there's something, It's, but one more random thought I was thinking with a. So I found it has nothing to do with anything, but it's actually, I don't know. So like on Van Halen 1, they cover a Kinks song, and on the first Romantics record, they cover a Kinks song. When are you guys going to cover it? No. And like, it's interesting that you guys opened for Van Halen on their first go about, and then now you're playing in the Romantics. Do you dig the Kinks at all?
Oh, yeah, I love the Kinks.
Yeah?
In fact, it's kind of funny. And in my book, I have all kinds of stories in there, but I was
Is it out?
saying how
Is the book out?
No.
Okay.
No, we're going through a kind of a final review edit now. As of last week, we got through the whole book, my editor and I, and with editing. And now we're doing like starting from the beginning and going through it again. Review and kind of arranging it and this and that. But anyway, there's a story in there about the Van Halen thing before I in the book about the tour and all that. I said the first time I heard them was in a bar in Columbus, Ohio, actually. And in Screams, and their first album came out, and they were playing "You Really Got Me" a lot on the radio. That was like their Kinks cover that they did. Right. But I said it was always annoying to me being a big Kinks fan because David Lee Roth didn't get the lyrics right from the get-go, which always annoyed me. And I said small beans, but to me it bugged the shit out of me.
Then I must really bug the shit out of you.
Well, it's like the first line he goes, "Girl, you really got me now. You got me so," and then the first line is, "Girl, you really got me going. You got me so."
Yeah.
Which makes way more. You don't say now. You haven't even got to that point yet. That was his first line. So anyway, yes, big Kinks fan, and I didn't even realize that for years, or a couple of years. I didn't realize that the Romantics, that was actually a Kink song because it wasn't really on any American releases or anything. And I had all their albums and everything. And then one day I was listening to one of the first good and thorough, whatever the word is, Kink's compilations called Kink Chronicles. And it's a double album. It's a kind of a black album cover, and I think it has like some Buckingham Palace guys on the front or something. And
Buckingham Palace guys.
Yeah, hey, get them fucking Buckingham Palace guys, you know. And it's like, you know, the last song or something on the second disc or whatever, and I think, wait a minute, I didn't know that was the case. It was in England, it was like a B-side or something, but it never really was over here. But they had found that. I asked them about it later. They said, oh yeah, we heard it on that Kink Chronicles album. So that's where that came from. But that's my Kink story about that. My inside Kinks, where they got it from.
Getting even further away from the Handcuffs' new album.
Well,
but it totally sounds like a Romantics type song, you know.
Right. And it kind of to tie it back into the new Handcuffs' new album, kind of on the idea of like Brian Eno, like that last track, Tobogganing, which is I think you guys' only instrumental track that I've heard. Did that have some kind of Eno-isms? That was a really particular cut.
No, and at the very top of the record,
there's an instrumental at the very top too.
Grapefruit.
Okay. Do they tie together? Oh, anyway, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, I love that you're like, oh, you're like full of wonder. You're amazing. I love it.
This has been a lot of fun. You guys are a blast. But
I know I want to do this. I'm like, uh-oh, I'm gonna have to start stalking you now, Dave, because I feel like we're friends now. So awesome. You know, and I always stalk my friends. So
that's what Facebook's for.
Yeah, well, we'll have to definitely do that. All right. Anyway.
Now, what were you saying? What you're saying about instrument?
So yeah, I just found it interesting. So was that kind of like to go back to like kind of Eno influence? Because Tobogganing, like listening through, I'm like, this is a really particular track. Like, was it just like an idea that you guys had where lyrics didn't fit on top of it, or was it inspired by that kind of thinking of building off one thing? Because it moves. It's not like a Eno tune, but like there's that reoccurring riff. So I don't know, yeah, like the process with including this with the bunch, because this new bunch of tunes, because it's so separate from like the records before. I don't remember. I'm pretty like there was no instrumentals that I remember, unless I'm missing something. So yeah, I don't know, like the idea to kind of include that in like the process with that, was that like kind of inspired by those like artists like that?
First of all, the whole record. Our evolution with this record was based on, you know, like that old school album oriented vinyl, sort of the early 70s, you know, rock and roll, glam kind of stuff. So that did, so yes, that the instrumental kind of relates to that, because sometimes those bands would do that. And yeah, like Eno is a big influence on us. I don't think we named him in some of the publicity stuff, but he definitely is a big influence, just because of the creativity and the realness and the rawness. And it's just good. And actually we do a live, we cover an Eno song every once in a while, just to throw in, if we want to throw in a cover. Yeah. So and it's a singing Eno song, but it's, I guess I should name it. It's Needles in the Camel's Eye. So, and that's from Here Come the Warm Jets. And so, yeah, I mean, that was definitely inspired. It was sort of the whole album, including that song, was inspired by that feel and that sort of mindset, and what we evolved into we wanted to try to do this warm sounding, real, even though, I mean, we love production, and there is some production, obviously there's production on the album, warm, real sounding, early 70s vibe.
That classic,
not classic rock, but classic sonically.
Classic sonically.
Right.
Like it was almost supposed to be like someone found a long lost album from that
era. We were influenced a lot by like Mott The Hoople, and Led Zeppelin and, that kind of stuff.
People are getting away from that stuff. And to this
T-Rex.
day, and also our other theory was from, to this day, young kids, like I've heard stories of going, oh, yeah, my kid came up to me the other day and said, Dad, have you ever heard of a band called the Kinks?
Or Led Zeppelin. They love Led Zeppelin.
I discovered this band called Led Zeppelin. You ever heard of them, Dad? It's great. And they go, now my kid's obsessed with Led Zeppelin all of a sudden. So that stuff still resonates and it still touches the nerve. So I said, it's kind of getting away from that. Why don't we try to write an album?
And we love that stuff anyway.
Almost has that same thing that stuff is still relevant, and let's keep it alive and keep rock and roll alive.
And it's also got a little different feel because I am a, female singer. I don't consider myself a female singer. I'm just a singer, but I do have a different pitch and a different tone and timbre than, the male rock and roll singers, but I'm still very, very much inspired by them. Even though I love plenty of women who sing and play music and write. But yeah, so we wanted to kind of incorporate that feel. I think we should be honest about tobogganing.
Well, a lot of, things that resonated with us, we go, let's produce this production wise, let's do something like that. And like I was telling you before a while back, we were like, can you think of like when we were working on the album, can you think of how were the background vocals placed, on some record like that? Like when you hear that record, and then we'd go back, I'd pull that out, or we would pull it up, or whatever, and I go, and everybody like a lot of times they would turn to me because I'm like a music encyclopedia here, and I go, what's the song that has that? Okay, I know. How about blah blah blah, and then they would pull it up, and they go, oh wow, they're really actually quite loud. Or like I said before, it's like, wow, there's not, nowadays, you got to have a rhythm guitar and you got a lead guitar and you got a blah. And it's like, wow, there's like nothing when they're doing that solo. There's nothing else on there. It's just the guitar stopped playing and started playing the solo.
Right.
So we would pull stuff out. So anyway, a lot of records or bits and pieces. Oh man, I love how that one part feels or that cool thing. And we got to have something like that. And so what
tobogganing was inspired by a George Harrison instrumental song. And so, it's pretty obscure. Which is pretty much an instrumental album. It's an instrumental album. And the reason we were inspired by it, there's a big, George Harrison tribute every year for his birthday, where like a lot of bands in town and some bands from out of town will come in and, play a couple songs. So we've done a couple of those shows. They're like huge sold out shows. They're very fun. And we did a couple of them. And one of the songs we picked to do a tribute, like the bands play like, 2 or 3 or 4 songs. So one of the songs we picked to do as a tribute was a song from his Wonderwall album, which is the soundtrack for this bizarre movie. Which was his first. The first solo Beatles album, even though it's questionable how much George had to do with the album. But I've read. Has a song. He had a song on it called Ski-ing, and it's SKI-ing. And so we did that song and we were like, this is great. We should do something like this on the new album. And it just we covered that for a little while. Yeah, we covered it. It's like very short and repetitive, but so that is our tip of the hat to his instrumental bit and not just his, but a lot of other bands who've done instrumental bits. There's a band called Blodwyn Pig who we were inspired by. That was like an offshoot of Jethro Tull, and they're like so amazing. And I had never heard of them until just a few years ago, when Brad sort of turned me on to them. And so that was our inspiration. It was a tip of the hat to a George Harrison song called. And that one is pretty
direct. I need to write something just like that, you know.
Yeah. So it was like, but it's definitely
not the same riff, but it's like same neighborhood. We just love that feel of it.
The tip of the hat, because we feel like it didn't get as much attention as it should have because it was pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the original track is awesome.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
got Ringo and Clapton, and I think Klaus Vorman's on bass.
So
it's just this riff that goes. And it's like,
so we're like,
like I said, we covered it for a little bit.
Yeah,
I said, we got to, write something like that and stick it on the end of the record.
Yeah. So we wanted to do the tip of the hat to that because we thought it was like not noticed enough how creative and cool it was. So that's where that came about. But it also, again, was inspired. I mean, there were bits of Eno in that as well, and bits of other artists who we really, even like, Ravi Shankar and things like that, which obviously was influenced.
Even in that one song along, there's all kinds of just a lot of influences and different little things. I could sit down and say, oh, that comes from that and that comes from that. But it was all kind of entertainment for us at the same time. And then maybe somebody will catch it. And we've done that throughout our albums all along. And sometimes I'll think, oh, this is so obvious,
tips of the hat. And then people are like,
then no one will say anything, it's like, oh, I never noticed that before. It's like,
yeah. So we like we enjoy, being able to.
It's like fun being sneaky.
Yeah. Being sneaky, but also, it's our love for music and and the music before us, and even the music nowadays. There's, even modern music. There's so much of it we love.
It just shows
that how
deep it goes,
Yeah, we get influenced by things, and we want to showcase what our influences are. So we sometimes wear our influences on our sleeve, which I don't mind. I mean, a lot of bands do that. The Raconteurs do that, and Beck does that, and St. Vincent, Annie Clark does that, and I think I love that they do that. That makes me happy. I love hearing their influences. Again, it's inspiring.
Right. And you can, you're like celebrating it with them. It's like, it's not as much on their sleeve. They're wearing the band shirt. They're like, oh, they're a fan of the Ramones. They're wearing the Ramones shirt. I get it. And like, I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think if anything, like, we're influenced by something, we should share it. And if we're moved enough to make our own version of it, or not version of it, our own adaptation of it, because it's moved us that much. That's so epic. And I love the tobogganing skiing trade-off. That's so cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a labor of love for us.
Yeah,
and
have to go check it out now.
Yeah, now I definitely am.
That album is pretty much kind of annoying. It is. I mean, it's got a lot of...
Almost snorted coffee through my nose.
I mean, I love sitar as much as the next one, but there's a lot of... like, okay.
Stuff that's really fun to... Actually, stuff that's really fun to play.
Yeah.
But hard to listen to. So I appreciate that. It's really enjoyable to play.
And... but there's about 4 tracks on there, a little short, like that skiing, and they all have like weird names, so I can't think of all of them. One, like Glass Box and.
Right.
But anyway, if you kind of skim through that, there's some really a couple cool things on that album. So worthy.
Definitely.
And diehard people, Beatle people, and things like that were like, oh, that's so. Like even when we did skiing, which is obscure enough.
When we did the actual skiing. Yeah.
After we played it at that, like, oh my God, I can't believe you played skiing. That is so fucking cool.
That's awesome.
It's like, oh, as soon as you went into it, I knew exactly what it was. People are like,
yeah.
Like,
but you gotta love the fanatic that they're sharing with you, and now it's a thing. That's so cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you guys, I really enjoyed diving into Handcuffs' career, and Brad, I went pretty deep with yours, and I was hoping we'd keep this handcuff related, so sorry if we dove other directions, but this has been a lot. You guys are a blast. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, can I mention our other band members' names?
Please,
so that,
please.
Okay, so Emily Togni is our bassist, and she also does background vocals. Alison Hinderliter, keyboards. Jeffrey Kmieciak, guitarist, lead guitar, and
Kmieciak with an L.
No, stop
No,
it.
just kidding.
And also we had a guest keyboardist, Morgan Fisher, played on a couple songs from Mott The Hoople,
Nice.
who has become one of our very best friends, and he's lovely. And so I just want to shout out to them for and Mike Hagler, who we've talked about, for making this album amazing. Oh, also our friend Inga Olsen played cello on a couple tracks. And we had a blast also. And I hope if you ever want to do it again, hello, everybody. We have a new album coming out and we didn't talk about that much, which I guess is a testament to how much fun we had with Dave.
Was it? Well, I'll plug everything at the top. Is there any like shows and any, I know the book is a thing that's being thought. Anything else we want to plug at the end? Like any gigs coming up, any ideas of when this book's going to drop?
Well,
I'm hoping by the end of the year it'll,
Yeah.
because it's got a ways to go. I mean, it's all written. We're editing now, but then, you got all the other stuff to do, all
Right.
the indexes and this and that, and photos and print and press. And
I'll plug the record. And then me reading through it and making sure. No, don't put that in. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I have not read even a portion of it yet. So I'm letting him. It's his thing.
what's my thing?
Your book.
Are you gonna you should do the audio book of it.
Oh, I will. I will do. I'll do the audiobook. I will do the. Actually, I will do the audiobook.
My voice is so mumbly and whiny.
No, I'm going to do the audio. He said me. I should do the audiobook.
Okay.
I will do the audiobook. I'll do my very low voice so that it sounds like a man. No, not that it matters, or it sounds like a non-binary person.
Do your impression.
Yeah, I'll do my Brad impression. No, but I'd like to just the album is coming out. I think it's in June. The whole album's coming out. The single "I Cry for You" is out now. We're also releasing it on vinyl, but because of supply chain issues, it's going to be a while for vinyl, months and months.
Yeah,
but we're excited about getting the vinyl out because that will be true to our vision and our mission. But we're excited about the whole record coming out because it's been there were some trials and tribulations with releasing it and being on a different label, and now we're on a label that we love, and Pravda Records, who are great. Our record release show in Chicago will be July 23rd at one of the coolest clubs in town called Liars Club. That's all I got. Hopefully we'll get to Cleveland.
That would be sick. Have you do the Handcuffs play Cleveland? Have you guys done that before?
I don't think we've played Cleveland.
It's closest.
We've Columbus.
Played New York and Detroit and
Columbus and Nashville. But I would love to do Cleveland because Cleveland rocks, right?
Right. I think so.
There's a song written about it.
There is a song written about it, and that doesn't. But as far as like the community itself, like the music community we have here in Cleveland is very supportive of all the artists, and like I can go on for a while about how, like, especially during the shutdown, how much that shined. There was so much I spent a lot of time working with the places like the Beachland and the Grog Shop, these smaller venues, trying to keep them going, and learning how to stream and do all this nonsense, and like.
I always forget about the beach.
Yeah, the same thing happened here in Chicago. We came together as a community, not just the musicians, but the crew people and bars and venues and booking people, and it was pretty great to come together as a community through something that affected us so much, like really hard for so many people. And I do feel like we did all come together, and I'm glad to hear that they did that in other cities. Because it's so important. And I think it made us stronger as a community. It really did. It made us all just want to support each other so much more, which, is just heartwarming.
Definitely.
And we have, I don't know if you've seen we just released a new video for our new single, or our first single.
So there's a video that's
I Cry for You. And what else? Oh, this is kind of funny, real quick. When I was finally coming to realization and wanting to do something different and update from my first band I had, my first serious good band that I had way back when when I was putting together Screams.
Yeah.
I said, we got to get the heck out of Peoria, where we live, Pekin and Peoria. And we almost moved to Cleveland.
Nice.
Well, and only because I used to love the early Roxy magazines.
Right.
They were a real hit.
And they were from Cleveland?
No, it was out of New York, but they were talking about, early bands at the time, not Frankenstein, but Dead Boys,
right?
Who were called Frankenstein before they're, and
Rocket from the
but
Train.
it said, oh, Cleveland, the new Liverpool, Cleveland, the new, with bands like the Raspberries and blah blah blah. We're like, oh, maybe we should move to Cleveland. But anyway, we got detoured, and we actually moved and got out to another music town called Champaign, Illinois.
Right.
So anyway, we were almost in Cleveland.
Awesome.
Sure.
Well, this was fun, guys. Well, have a
right.
wonderful the rest of today, and I'll be in touch with
right.
you guys soon.
Thanks,
Okay, thank
Dave.
you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.